Welcome back. Our previous lesson was on how subsidies offered to sellers shape equilibrium outcomes. Today, we'll be looking at how subsidies offered to buyers shape equilibrium outcome. Now, we define subsidy as a direct or indirect payment to individuals or firms in the form of a cash payment from government or a targeted tax cut. Now, let's look at how subsidies offered to buyers shape equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So, assume the market of apples. Before the subsidy is offered to a buyer, we have our old demand curve interacting with our supply curve here, creating an equilibrium point at point A. At this point, equilibrium price is 4 and equilibrium quantity is, say, 100. Now, if the government were to offer subsidy to consumers, the subsidy increases the willingness of a consumer to purchase the good. So this shifts the demand curve to the right by the margin of the subsidy. So let's assume that the government offers a £1 subsidy for apples per apples bought. Now this subsidy is going to shift the demand curve to the right by the margin of the subsidy, which is £1 in this case. This will move us to a new demand curve. Now equilibrium occurs where the new demand curve intersects with the supply curve at point B. At this point B here, the quantity of apple purchased will be, let's say, 120, and the equilibrium price will be 4.5. Now, at this new equilibrium price, sellers are going to receive a higher price, which is 4.5 in this case. So let's assume that for every 4.5 price that is paid to a seller by a consumer, the government says, I will pay back £1. So every time you go to the market to buy an apple, even though the producer says the price is 4.5, I will subsidize it and pay £1 per every apple that you buy. So the actual price that consumers are going to be paying in this case is £1 less of the 4.5, which is 3.5. So when there's a subsidy on buyers, sellers will receive higher prices and buyers will also pay lower prices. Let's look at this carefully using the curve. Before the subsidy was offered, the equilibrium price was 4. But after the subsidy was offered, demand shifted, creating a new equilibrium at point B, which moved us to equilibrium price of 4.5. Now, this equilibrium price of 4.5 is the price that producers are now receiving after the subsidy was offered. So the difference is 0.5. So producers will receive 0.5 more per apple sold than they were receiving previously. Now, on the consumer side, every time they pay 4.5 to producers, the government subsidizes by £1. So the actual price that consumers will be paying is 3.5. So the difference is also 0.5. They were paying £4 before, now they are paying 3.5. So they are paying 0.5 lower. So the subsidy will now give sellers a higher price of 0.5 more, from 4 to 4.5, and buyers will now pay a lower price by 0.5 per apple purchase, from 4 to 3.5. Now, some things to note about our curve. The subsidy increases the quantity sold. So we can see that the subsidy increases quantity sold from 100 to 120. Now, this is because a subsidy increases the willingness of consumers to buy the product. Consumers interpret a subsidy as a reduction in the price of a good. So according to the law of demand, when the price reduces, you buy more of it. So because the government has subsidized the good, consumers are going to be buying more of that good. At the new equilibrium point B, producers will be receiving a higher price for the good. And the law of supply also says when prices of a good increase, you have to increase the supply. So producers are also going to increase the quantity supplied of the good. So these two forces interacting is going to increase equilibrium quantity from 100 to 120. Now, the next thing to note about this curve is that the subsidy reduces price paid by buyers and increases the price received by sellers. So the subsidy increases the price received by sellers from 4 to 4.5. So the difference is 0.5. And the subsidy also reduces the price paid by buyers from 4 to 3.5. So the difference is also 0.5. Now this means that both sellers and buyers enjoy the economic benefit of the subsidy. So even though the subsidy was offered to consumers, both sellers and consumers enjoy the benefit of the subsidy. So this benefit is measured by the reduction in price for consumers and the increase in price for producers. So economic benefit here is the benefit created by the change in after subsidy prices faced by buyers and sellers as a result of the subsidy. In this example, the economic benefit was shared equally between the sellers and the buyers. So the subsidy of £1 offered to consumers is shared equally between consumers and producers. Producers get an extra £0.5 increase in the price they receive, and consumers pay 0.5 lower per apple that they buy. Now, it's not always the case that the benefit will be shared equally between the two parties. It could be that one party will receive more benefits than the other, or the benefit can be accrued entirely by one party and the other party completely loses out. And this will be influenced by the nature of the demand and supply elasticities. So this is all that we have for our lesson on how subsidies offered to buyers shape equilibrium outcome. Our next lesson will be on price ceilings and price floors. If you enjoyed today's lesson, consider subscribing. Thank you.